For the longest time, the story we all heard about Jeffrey Epstein was pretty simple, right? A monstrously wealthy predator shielded by his power and influence. But what if that story, the one we all know, completely misses the real point? What if we've been so focused on the man, we've completely missed the machine that he was just one part of?
And that's really the core question, isn't it? The official story, yeah, it explains the crimes, but it doesn't even come close to explaining how he got away with it for decades. How does someone get that kind of immunity, that kind of protection? That's not just one guy being rich and powerful. No, that points to a system, a whole architecture built to protect him.
So what's changed? Well, a ton of documents just dropped. We're talking millions of pages of investigative files that are forcing us to rethink, well, everything. A much, much darker and more complicated picture is emerging. And it's making us ask some pretty uncomfortable questions about who Epstein really was, what he was really doing, and maybe most importantly, who he was doing it for.
All right, so let's start here with a major shift in how we look at this. What if the abuse, as horrific as it was, wasn't actually the point? What if it was just a tool?
This quote really gets to the heart of it. The abuse wasn't the end game, it was the means. Think of it like a factory. The sexual exploitation was the assembly line, and it was churning out a very specific and very valuable product. So, what exactly was that product?
The product? It's a Russian word, kompromat, compromising material. It's blackmail, plain and simple. This whole thing wasn't about sick thrills. It was about manufacturing leverage, and they were doing it on an industrial scale.
Okay, so if it's a factory, let's take a look at the assembly line.
And this was no accident. It was a cold, calculated process. Basically, a classic four-step honey trap model you'd see in any spy movie. Step 1, procurement. They'd recruit women, often from Eastern Europe, through front agencies. Step 2, introduction. They'd introduce these women to powerful targets in a totally controlled setting. Step 3, compromise and document. They recorded everything. And finally, step 4, leverage. They'd file it all away, creating this massive archive of secrets for later use. See? It's a system, repeatable, predictable.
And you have to look at the tech they were using. This wasn't some off-the-shelf security system. We're talking about an enterprise-grade surveillance network, a digital panopticon. Cameras were hidden everywhere on that island. But here's the real kicker. Everything was stored locally, on a private server. You know what that means? It was completely shielded from things like government subpoenas. They were creating their own private NSA, a digital vault of secrets that they and only they controlled.
So the big question is, if Epstein was running this compromat factory, who was he selling to? Who was the main client? Well, the data is starting to point pretty clearly in one direction.
Okay, get ready for this because this is the bombshell from those new files. A 2017 FBI report doesn't even talk about Epstein as a predator. The term they use is geopolitical middleware, basically a human bridge between financial worlds. And even more specifically, they finger him as a wealth manager for Vladimir Putin, helping the Kremlin move and hide its money.
And the amount of money we're talking about is just insane. $1.1 billion. That's what flowed through his accounts at just one bank. This isn't some rich guy's personal slush fund. This is money moving on the scale of a small country. So how on earth did he pull that off?
Well, he used a neat little trick in the financial world called correspondent banking. Sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. It's basically a backdoor for foreign banks, like those in Russia, to get access to US dollars. They just open an account inside a big US bank and boom, they've got a direct pipeline from, say, Moscow to New York. And you can see exactly how it worked right here. The money goes into Epstein's JP Morgan accounts. He then acts as the middleman, the middleware, and funnels that cash right into Russian banks, even ones that were under sanctions. His network was the essential link. Without him, the pipeline just breaks down.
Now check this out. This timeline is wild. Look at when Epstein's communications with Moscow go through the roof. It's right after 2014, exactly when the West slapped sanctions on Russia for annexing Crimea. That is not a coincidence. This strongly suggests he was a strategic asset, basically activated by Russia to help them get around those sanctions. But here's the thing. An operation this sophisticated, it doesn't just spring up overnight. The intelligence connections, the financial schemes, a whole compromat factory, where did it all come from? To get that answer, we have to look at the woman who's always by his side, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Okay, so first we have to talk about her dad, Robert Maxwell. This guy was like a character straight out of a spy novel. The declassified files show he was likely a triple agent, simultaneously working for the KGB in Russia, MI6 in Britain, and the Mossad in Israel. He was playing all sides, a true master of the game, right at the heart of the Cold War.
Now look at this comparison. The blueprint is almost identical. Robert Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Let's just tick the boxes. Deep ties to intelligence, especially Russian? Check. Complicated financial schemes to move huge amounts of cash? Check. A primary method for gaining leverage? Maxwell used compromised software. Epstein used compromised people. It's the same idea, just updated for a new era. And of course, the end. Both died under extremely mysterious circumstances, right when it looked like the whole thing was about to come crashing down. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern.
And this is what intelligence analysts are now saying. Epstein didn't invent this operation. He inherited it. After her father's mysterious death, it was Ghislaine Maxwell who effectively handed over the keys to the kingdom. She brought her father's networks, his methods, his entire playbook to Jeffrey Epstein. He was just the one chosen to run the family business.
And that brings us to the really unsettling part of all this. Because while the people involved might be dead or in jail, the system they built, that's still standing.
And don't think for a second this is just ancient history. Just this year, in 2026, the Prime Minister of Poland launched a full-blown national security investigation into the Epstein files. He's not treating this as a simple crime story. He's framing it as a direct threat to NATO, one that might have been run by Russian intelligence services all along.
And listen to this warning from him directly. The compromat they gathered, he's saying it could still be used today against leaders who are currently in power. The blackmail doesn't have an expiration date. That means the archive of secrets from that island could be one of the most dangerous political weapons on the planet right now.
So what does this all mean? It means Robert Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. In the end, they were all just operators. They were replaceable parts in a machine.
But the architecture, this system of compromise itself, that's not so easy to replace. In fact, it's still running.
And that leaves us with a really tough question. If taking out the operators doesn't actually solve the problem, if the system just finds new people to run it, then what in the world does it take to actually tear down the architecture itself? How do you dismantle a system of secrets that's been operating in the shadows for generations?